Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another month of WatchGuard update webinar with JSCM Group. This is Madison Slater. I am the Vice President of Security and Compliance here at JSCM and also your friendly neighborhood WatchGuard expert. So thank you all for tuning in this week. We really appreciate your time, and let's go ahead and jump right in. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. All lines will be on mute automatically. Not that we don't want to hear from you all. We just like to keep the background noise to a minimum. This webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to play this back on our website. There's a chat window located on the right side of your screen, so feel free to send over any questions there. All are welcome, and I'll make sure to answer those at the end. All right, so as far as our topics for this month, we're going to talk about our current firmware options, give you an update there, talk a little bit more about AuthPoint risk-based authentication for geofencing, talk about geolocation, a service that we want to make sure you are fully utilizing, and then our demo this month is going to be on deep packet inspection. And finally, we will, of course, share all of our upcoming training dates in case you want to get any more training done here with JSCM Group. All right, current firmware options. Not anything has changed since last month, but just to go through these. So with our XTM 800, 1500, 2500 series and our XTM-Vs, the latest firmware release is 12.1.3, update 6, released on August 2nd. That is our recommended version that we are suggesting everyone be running. However, if you still have any XTM devices in place, please look at upgrading those sooner rather than later as far as your hardware goes, because WatchGuard has stopped the updates on those. They are just releasing bug fixes to 12.1.3, so you're not getting any of the new features, and a lot of the new services are not compatible with those older devices. For our Firebox T10s, T15s, T30s, T35s, T50s, M200s, M300s, and our WatchGuard AP, latest release is 12.5.8, released on August 2nd. We are still recommending 12.5.7 Update 3 for those devices. 12.5.8 does not have an update out yet for any known bugs. And then our Firebox T20, T40, T55, T70, etc. I won't bore all of you by reading all of those. The latest release is 12.7.1, released on August 2nd. We are recommending 12.7 Update 1, released back in May. I know that one's a little bit older, but we want to make sure that there are no known issues with those releases. If it goes any longer and we're not seeing any updates from WatchGuard, then we'll start putting some of these firmware versions through a little bit more of a test. But in general, we wait for the update 1 on any new firmware just so we get any known bug fix patches in that firmware update. All right, so I'll be honest, guys, we haven't had a lot of new updates coming from WatchGuard over the last couple of months, so this is definitely something we've hit on the last few months. However, we are hitting on this because we want to make sure you are aware of it, because we feel like this is a really important feature coming for anyone that is currently using AuthPoint. If you are not using AuthPoint, please make sure you have at least some kind of MFA solution in place. MFA is something that is very important to the security of your organization. If you are looking at options, AuthPoint is a great fit for a lot of organizations, and we are always happy to do demos on that if you would like to see it up close. One of the new features that we have is Geofencing. This is going to allow us to write our policies based on countries. Geofencing is a really important feature when it comes to protecting our organizations, and we're going to be doing big pushes on this for ourselves when this feature becomes available, for our clients. So I've been trying to get the word out there that this is coming for AuthPoint. This is part of WatchGuard's risk framework for AuthPoint. They've already done network locations and time schedules, and then geofencing is going to be the next piece of this. What geofencing is going to allow us to do is to restrict access based off of the country that the connection is coming from. So for example, if you use Microsoft 365 for your email and you are protecting it with AuthPoint, you are already adding a layer of security, but through these geofencing policies, you are going to be able to write restrictions on that so that the country is part of the policy itself, and you can also use GPS to determine if location will be required. or sorry, determine if GPS location is required as part of that identification. For things like 365, this can be really important because a lot of times these attacks are coming at strange hours of the day. You're not necessarily seeing them. Depending on the country that it's coming from, it could come in the middle of the night or very, very early morning, and your users are getting weird MFA notifications. So you can restrict that a little bit more by putting this geofencing feature in place. Just lock it down so those countries can't get there at all. If all of your employees are based in the United States or based in North America, set it so that that's the only place you can get to your 365. To everyone else, that portal will look like it is not available. Now, sort of piggybacking off of that, I want to talk a little bit about geolocation. So I think that geolocation is one of our unsung heroes when it comes to security services. Geolocation has been around for a while at this point. It is part of both basic and total security suite. So either tier of licensing, you get access to this. Now, geolocation, much like geofencing for AuthPoint, gives us the ability to restrict access based off of the country of origin. We can look at geolocation first from an inbound access. Inbound attacks often come from other countries at weird hours of the day. So again, they can be happening at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully, we're all asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, which means we're not necessarily sitting there watching our traffic logs when that event occurs. So we can use geolocation to stop some of that access on our inbound policies. Most organizations have their employee base located in certain parts of the world. So we can lock it down so that anywhere else that access is not allowed. This is really important for things like VPN policies. You can put geolocation on your inbound policies like your VPN access so that people in other countries can't hit that at all. So when we're talking about things like securing your SSL VPN, sure, you can do it with authentication, but if you're not taking extra steps, you've still got a possible point of entry through compromised accounts. So you might as well shut that point of entry down if you don't need it. Outbound access can also be protected, so you can stop your users from getting out to sites or services hosted in other countries. Think of it from the perspective of something like ransomware. When that piece of software, that malicious software, gets inside of your network, it needs to reach out to its control center, its command center. Those are not usually or often located in the United States. So stop its ability to reach out. Geolocation is something that is enabled by default if you have it licensed, but it's not actually really configured, meaning that there's no countries that it is set to block automatically. Everything is just allowed, and all it's doing is logging. So we can write specific policies for geolocation attached in certain parts of your network or certain parts of your configuration to really make sure that that is giving your organization the best layer of protection possible. If you haven't really done a lot with geolocation, I highly recommend that you revisit that service. We actually just sent out an alert this week about it, trying to get more people to implement that. These services, these geo-based blocking services, are not foolproof. Plenty of attacks, plenty of malicious access comes from the United States. It's not impossible for someone to route their traffic through another country. It happens a lot, but we can significantly reduce our external visibility from these countries that are often considered malicious, or just from people that really shouldn't be accessing us regardless. So again, if it's been a while since you've looked at geolocation, if you've never looked at it, let's take some time, look at that service, figure out ways we can make that work for your organization to be a little bit more secure. All right, so moving over to our demo for this month. This is something that we've talked about before, but it is constantly on my docket of things to get people invested in, make sure that they understand why this is something that we talk about. Deep packet inspection. So I will go ahead and tell you all this is one of the #1 findings we have on any security assessment we do, the lack of DPI. So let's have a little Internet 101 really quick. Internet traffic, web traffic operates over two protocols, HTTP, which is port 80 TCP, and HTTPS, which is port 443 TCP. HTTP Regular web traffic is plain traffic. It's not encrypted, it's not protected, which is why there has been a significant push over the last several years to reduce its footprint, to reduce the amount of HTTP websites that we have. Now, the vast majority of websites are running HTTPS. HTTPS is the encrypted version of web traffic. It's using that SSL protocol. So it's more secure. It's why things like Amazon, like your banking website, your online program to log into your 401k account, hopefully are using HTTPS. HTTPS is the recommended method for people who are doing web development to create their website securely so that that traffic, when it is passing between the person accessing the site and the site itself, can't be intercepted or read. This presents a problem though from a security standpoint, because just because something is encrypted doesn't mean that it is safe. It is very easy for an attacker to go out, spin up a website, make it whatever they want, put a form on there, put links on there that are malicious, and they buy an SSL certificate to make that site HTTPS. They then phish your user. They get your user to go to that HTTPS site. User accesses it. The problem lies in the firewall's ability to then see that traffic. Because it is encrypted, when that HTTPS traffic is passing through your firewall from your user to the website and vice versa, the firewall can't see it unless we implement deep packet inspection. Deep packet inspection gives the firewall the ability to securely unencrypt that data, monitor it, analyze it, filter it, and then pass it on to the user. Without DPI, the vast majority of your security services do not work over HTTPS. Not, they sort of work a little bit. No, they don't work. Things like Gateway Antivirus doesn't work if you over HTTPS if you don't have DPI. Um, your APT blocker, if you have that licensed, doesn't work if you don't have DPI. Intelligent AV doesn't work on HTTPS if you don't have DPI. You need deep packet inspection on your firewall. It's not a suggestion. It is something that should be considered a requirement for your network. No, you don't need to roll it out for things like your guest network, but your internal trusted traffic absolutely needs deep packet inspection, or your firewall is handicapped in its ability to protect your users' web traffic. And the vast majority of their web traffic now is HTTPS. So how do we get it configured? Well, let's jump over to our demo real quick. So the focus on DPI relies on our web proxies, specifically our HTTPS web proxy. So when you're setting up an HTTPS web proxy, I've got one created here. Let's pop in here. By default, DPI is not enabled. Now, the benefit of turning on DPI on your WatchGuard doesn't require any extra licensing. It's just configuration. So this is my HTTPS proxy action. It's one I've created, but I haven't really done anything with it. The thing that triggers deep packet inspection is right here. By default, our action is set to allow, which is just telling the firewall, yeah, allow that HTTPS through. I can't really do anything with it. To turn on deep packet inspection, we have to set this to inspect. When we set this to inspect, it then gives us the option to select our another proxy action based on HTTP. What we do here is we select the proxy action that we are using on our regular HTTP proxy. What happens when we hit inspect is that we're telling the firewall to now actually monitor HTTPS traffic, actually look at it, inspect it, but use the same parameters that I have on my HTTP. The reason for that is that you've already set up that HTTP, you've already got your security features in place, you would have already configured your gateway AV and your APT blocker and all of this other stuff. So now that we're inspecting that HTTPS traffic, we're just telling it, treat it like it's our regular HTTP. Now you can go into your firewall right now on your HTTPS proxy and you can say, Madison told me I need to have DPI, so I'm going to turn this on. Don't do that because you're going to break something. Yes, you need to have DPI, but this is actually not the place that you need to start. This is how you enable it, but there's another piece of this process. In order for deep packet inspection to work, there has to be a certificate that allows the firewall to unencrypt that traffic. The firewall has to be seen as a trusted piece of this process. Otherwise, it just looks like a man-in-the-middle attack. We're intercepting traffic, we're unencrypted, we're breaking it open, and then we're passing it on to the user. Now, the benefit of this is of using this on the firewall is that the firewall already has a certificate that will work for this. So at this point, from the firewall's perspective, I can click inspect, save my policy. The firewall is now perfectly capable of doing DPI. But what about my user computers? So when the firewall unencrypts this traffic and inspects it, it's then handing that traffic on to the user. The user's computer will need to have the same certificate. If the computer that the user is accessing from doesn't have the certificate, they are going to get a certificate error every HTTPS site that they get. So that is actually the first thing that you're going to want to do for DPI is roll out the certificate. Do you need to be a certificate expert? Absolutely not. You absolutely do not need to be a certificate expert. It is actually a pretty simple thing that you can do. There's two ways you can grab the certificate from the firewall. The firewall has a self-service certificate portal that you can access that is built on port 4126. So you can access that by going to http://IP of your firewall :4126/cert portal. Don't worry, I'm going to show you where all of that's written out. You can also grab it from your Firebox System Manager if you would like to do it that way. Now what we're doing is we're getting this certificate and we're going to prep it so we can roll it out. Yeah, you can install it individually on all the machines on your network, but I would assume that none of you are going to want to do that unless you literally just have two computers. So what I have typically done is taken the certificate, put it in group policy, had group policy push it out. If you do it that way, it's an easier rollout. It makes that certificate management a little bit faster. You're not having to manually touch all of your machines. The exception to that would, of course, be any device that is not domain joined, like if you have any Mac devices on your network, in which case you would want to install those directly. So in my Firebox System Manager, I can go to View Certificates, and what I am looking for is the Proxy Authority certificate. I can export that. It's going to save it as a .pem file when you export. To push out through group policy, you just need to change that extension to .cer. Change it to an extension that is actually going to roll out through group policy. So it exports as a .pem. Once you get that certificate rolled out, then you can do the DPI piece from your firewall. Now, there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could be a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person and say, okay, certificate's rolled out. I am going to turn this on for everyone immediately. And I can go into my HTTPS proxy, and set it to inspect. I am not necessarily a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person. Mostly, I don't want my users complaining if something doesn't work exactly the way I'm anticipating. So what I have typically done is created a test group initially. So let's just call this HTTPS DPI test. And I'm going to decide how do I want to test this. So let's say I want to just start with my computer. So I'm going to write a policy just for my IP address. And I'm going to take my regular HTTPS proxy action, but I'm going to clone it so that I can just build off of that. I'm going to name this to specify that this is DPI, set my inspect, and set my proxy action. And because of the way that my policies are ordered, my policy will come first for me. Anyone else is just going to go through my regular HTTPS policy. The reason that I like to test it, when you turn on Deep Packet Inspection, it is actually monitoring HTTPS web traffic, which means you might have some sites that don't load the way that they used to. It's not that they're getting blocked, it's that DPI, the firewall, is having to inspect all of that traffic, so it could just be that it's taking a while for that site to load. If it is a site that is happening on, and it is a site that I absolutely trust, I know that that's a site that we need, I can always go in here and add exceptions. and I can just set my action on those websites to allow, much like what you see here, so that those sites are not getting actually inspected. Now, one of the things that makes DPI much easier to roll out now than it used to be is that WatchGuard has a pre-built list of exceptions. So they have a bunch of sites in here that are saying, these are good. Don't worry about it, DPI. You don't need to inspect those. And it helps improve that performance a little bit. As of some of the newer firmware, you can actually have it set where that list will download and update automatically. So that's also a new feature that you would see. One of the questions that I hear a lot, what about load on the firewall? You're going to notice a little bit of a performance hit, but honestly, it is not enough that I have ever seen to be of actual concern. I've never really noticed any significant change in website access speed. I think that it is more of a placebo effect. People that know it's there will think it's slow, but in reality, you're not actually seeing any big difference. If DPI is not something that you have rolled out, again, it is something that I am not saying is a suggestion. I would consider this to be a requirement at this point from a security standpoint. Now, those steps, those are pretty straightforward from an implementation standpoint, but of course, all of us like step-by-step guides. If you are not aware, one of the things that we do every month is we release a blog post on our website. You can get to it directly from our site. One of the things that you can also do is if you think that it's an article we might have written about, and I guarantee I've got an article out there about deep packet inspection, you can simply Google it, and that will take you right to our site. This particular article about DPI, I have written it so that it walks through every single thing that we just talked about, especially some in more detail. So it will talk about what DPI is, but also how do you deploy the certificate? How do you set up a test group? Why do you set up a test group? Turning it on DPI with Web Blocker, there is another step there if you're using Web Blocker. We let it run for a while anytime we're doing it. And then how do we complete that rollout? How do we get that fully implemented? And then down at the bottom, you'll see links for how to get that certificate rolled out. Again, if you're not a cert expert, perfectly fine. Join the club. I'm not either. That will help you roll it out that way as well. If you decide that you want to roll out DPI, you want to test it out, and you need some assistance, we are always happy to help. Reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to guide you on getting that implemented. Or you can attend one of our training classes. We always are offering training classes. They are typically every 3 weeks. We've actually got a class going on this week down in Atlanta. Our next class is going to be the week of October 4th. It's in Phoenix. We also offer all of our classes virtually. We have a Charlotte class at the end of October, October 25th through 28th. We hold those in our actual office, so if you'd like to come see us in person, we'd love to have you. Phoenix again in November the 15th through the 18th, and then back to Charlotte December 6th through 9th. We will also soon be releasing our Q1 schedule for 2022. So if you can't make it, you want to do some training, but you can't do it between now and the end of the year, we'll have those new dates up before too long. And then we always also offer custom on-site training. So if you've got a lot of people in your organization that you want to get trained, we can come to you. We are happy to do that. All right, and we will wrap up. If you have any questions, please feel free to send those over. I'll be happy to answer those. Any questions about DPI, about any of the new features, anything we didn't talk about today, I'm more than happy to answer before I cut you all loose and let you about your Thursday. All right, not seeing that we have any questions, but as always, if you come up with any after the fact, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is mslater@jscmgroup.com. You can also reach out to your account manager. They are more than capable of answering questions, especially when it comes to hardware. And if you ever need any service assistance, either myself or your account manager can point you in the right direction. Thank you all for your time this month. We really appreciate it. If you have, if Oh, sorry. I just realized we have a question. Under the TLS profile, what are the settings we should be using? So I'll be honest, I typically start with whatever the default profile is giving me. I've made some tweaks to it depending on the organization, but I usually just start with that default TLS profile, see if I'm running into any issues from there. But usually I'm, default where I can, make it as simple as I can, and then tweak it if I need to. So sorry for missing that question. Um, Thank you all again for your time this month. If you have any follow-up questions, again, feel free to reach out to us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you in October. Thanks.